Hey everybody, I'm Daniel from Spacedock, and let's talk about that space battle from the latest episode of The Expanse. That's Season 6, Episode 3, Force Projection. Now this is probably my favourite moment of the whole book series, and I've been waiting since 2016 to see it adapted to screen, and it really was adapted perfectly. There are a few differences from the book, which I'll talk about momentarily, but it elicited exactly the same response and feeling that the sequence did in Babylon's Ashes, which to me is the best Expanse book as far as I'm concerned, and it's just one of the best depictions of space combat tactics and one of the most satisfying maneuvers we've ever seen pulled off in a space battle narrative. Now this battle is essentially a pursuit of the Rocinante by 3 Free Navy warships. In the book version, it was 3 next-generation Corvette-class ships commandeered from the MCRN, and that was the Pella, the Koto, and the Shinsakuto. And in the show version, we still have the Pella, which is now a light cruiser, and 2 other ships, the Lauber and Granicus, which both appear to be just converted belter industrial ships outfitted for piracy. Now, like any good space battle, this whole sequence completely hinges on the decisions of certain characters. As is repeatedly pointed out at the start, this really should be a pretty easy win for the Free Navy in either version, and it's almost entirely crew competence on the Rocinante's part and mistakes on the Free Navy's part that carry the whole action. Now, the Rocinante is constantly burning away from the Free Navy ships, and because it has a fixed forward spinal railgun, in order to fire that back at the pursuers, it needs to cut its drive, completely invert, fire, continue to invert back to its original course, and then fire its engine again. Now, some of you might remember I did a video a while ago talking about why it would be a good idea to have aft-mounted spinal railguns or forward-mounted drive cones for exactly situations like this. It's worth pointing out that there are some ships in the TV version of The Expanse that would be able to handle a situation like this. The Scirocco class, for instance, has a turreted light railgun that's extended out beyond its profile, so it could fire back directly off the aft if it wanted to. But the Rocinante does a good job here despite being forced to repeatedly flip over to fire backwards. And it does make sense because the Roci was never actually built to carry a railgun, so there are always going to be some quirks to applying it in combat. The first thing we see is a huge torpedo salvo from the Pella fired at the Roci, which it completely fends off with its PDCs, which seem to be unfailingly reliable, especially in the TV show version. These things have been through so much and had vast salvos of missiles fired at them and managed to shake it off, even in Season 5 when it had like the entire cargo bay of a commandeered ship just dumped at it in torpedoes, and still managed to survive. Point defense definitely seems to be the ship's greatest strength. Now, the first big important moment in this battle, which pretty much single-handedly stops it from being a Free Navy whitewash, I think, is that Holden flips the Roci and fires the railgun from way outside of the usual railgun operating range, and by sheer luck and probably surprise, catches the Lauber and destroys it almost completely, or at least totally knocks it out of the battle. Now, the thing is, you normally fire railguns from inside what the Expanse calls hammerlock range, which basically is a sort of 1,000 kilometer-ish distance, where the instant of firing the railgun and the instant of the round hitting the target are pretty much the same instant. You're so close that you essentially hit the target the moment you press fire, and it's impossible for them to dodge. From any greater distance, a fast-acting ship's computer can see a railgun round coming and move out of the way. Now, this shot was fired from well within the safe distance for this belter ship to be able to dodge. We can only assume that the belters on board just hadn't expected them to try firing the railgun from such a usually ineffective range, and that surprise alone is what got them taken out. This starts a bit of a chain reaction throughout the fleet as the other ship, the Granicus, hangs back to begin rendering aid to the disabled Lauber, leaving it just as the Pella and Rocinante chasing one another. In the book version, this was handled by long-range missile support from Tycho Station, which is where the battle happened in that version, rather than a lucky shot from the Roci. Now, as they're pulling further away, we get the fantastic Bobby Draper sequence, which I absolutely loved in the book and absolutely loved this time. Essentially, they determine that the Pella is repeatedly dodging to port every time. Now, this is a bit changed in the show version, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure in the book version, they weren't dodging to port every time just like out of habit. Instead, Bobby kind of engineered a situation where they would be forced to dodge the way she wanted them to, and it wasn't really a matter of them predicting which way they would dodge based on what they've been doing before. Though I might be wrong about that, it has been a while. But in the show version, the Pella seems to be habitually dodging to port every time they fire the railgun at it, so knowing this, they plan to force it to dodge into a cloud of PDC fire. Now, if you watch the slow motion sequence of them firing, they fire a few torpedoes which vector in towards the dorsal and ventral sides of the Pella, and they fire the railgun off the Pella's starboard hull, so it can't dodge up or down laterally without risking hitting a torpedo. Most of its PDCs and crew are occupied shooting down those torpedoes, so the only natural reaction is to dodge to port, into the PDC fire, which in the book version they make clear the Pella wouldn't be able to see because the computers disregard PDC rounds as a threat once they leave a certain range of the engagement zone, because there's no danger of you hitting them really. And Bobby has to kind of override this to make the PDCs misfire into open space. This is just a genius use of like projectile speed timings to make this work, because of course the railgun is going to reach the target almost instantly, the PDC rounds are going to reach fairly quickly, and the torpedoes are going to reach in their own pace. So you have to time everything out based on the speed of the various projectiles to create this trap at the exact moment. I kind of prefer the idea that it's entirely the result of Bobby creating this situation where they're forced to dodge a certain way and the habits of the other pilot aren't involved, because that makes it so there's like no incompetence on the part of the Free Navy at all. It's just entirely brilliance on Bobby's part. And to be fair, the visual effects in the show do back up this version, because they still show the torpedoes coming in from the two angles and blocking off every other avenue of escape, just like the books did. It's just that they also have this foreshadowing about them always dodging the same way. But the moment when the cloud of PDC fire hits the Pella and goes all the way through the command deck and everything was just as satisfying in this version as it was in the book. You can't beat these moments where just ingenuity wins the day. It's also a display of kind of masterful gunnery. You get so many moments in science fiction books where you get displays of masterful piloting and stuff like that, but it's not very often that you get something like this displayed, because really Holden in the show version and Alex in the book version are just flying the Roci in a straight line and inverting it every now and then. It's not an impressive, incredible feat of piloting. All of the skill on display here is in the gunner's seat, in Bobby's seat, and it's absolutely her doing that they win this battle. Honestly, the Expanse at this point, it's difficult to even say which is its best space battle, because it's just racked up so many great ones, and I assume more are to come in the remainder of Season 6. But this really was a great display of how to write a brilliant space battle. If you remember my How to Write a Space Battle video, this really is ticking all the boxes that I laid out there. Continuous threat to the crew inside the ships, entirely based around action and reaction and character decision, not oversaturated with a million ships, just about the tactics and the distances and the planning. Really, really great stuff. It's making me want to read Babylon's Ashes again, which I may well do now that I've finished the rest of the series. The show's version only left me wishing it was just a little bit longer, with a little bit more time spent figuring out the maneuver, but you can only spend so much on CGI and you can only devote so much of an episode to it, so I'm more than content with what we got. Great work from the Expanse folks, as always. It'll be a terrible shame to finally run out the clock on the Expanse when these last few episodes are done. But if you are a lost and orphaned Expanse fan in desperate search of a new source of grounded space battles and character-driven storytelling, you might just enjoy our original science fiction audio drama, The Sojourn. It's available on Google Books, iTunes, and various other big audio distributors, and you can also get the series by pledging on Patreon, where at Wanderer tier or higher you can get a copy of our Sojourn Visual Dictionary, which is our sort of comprehensive lore book based on the old Star Wars visual dictionaries, delving into the world and setting of The Sojourn. Do check it out if you're interested, but either way, thank you so much for watching. This is Daniel from Spacedock, signing off.